Oh my goodness. What in the world does something like this mean? 2 to the power of 3/4? Take a breath. Look, I've got a plan. I wouldn't bring you to a place like this without a plan. Let's look at something more familiar. Something simple, like 3 to the power of 2, or 3 squared. That is 3 times 3, which equals 9. What else are we going to need to understand? We're going to need to know about square roots. The square root of a number is the number that, when multiplied by itself, gives us the first number. If 3 squared is 9, then the square root of 9 is 3. We can even write it like this, using what is called radical notation. This symbol is called the radical. It goes over the number that we're taking the square root of. The 9, which we call the radicand, is under the radical sign. The radical sign is also used for roots other than square roots. We'll talk about other kinds of roots in a minute. But you should know that there's a spot that shows what kind of root we're taking from the radicand. In this case, since it's a square root, the number that goes here is a 2, and this number is called the index. But since there's no number here, we know it's a square root. But just because we don't see the 2 there, it's still there, hiding where it's always been, like a tiny ghost. Ooh! Square roots are so common, though, that we don't even bother writing the index. We ain't afraid of no ghosts. Just remember, if there's no index on the radical, that means it's a square root. Okay, 3 squared is equal to 9. The square root of 9 is equal to 3. The square root undoes the squaring, and the squaring undoes the rooting. The square root is like hitting the undo button on a square. But remember, the ghost of the index of 2 is always there, even if we don't see it. This will become important later. Now, let's look at this. Any number raised to the power of 1 is just that number. So what? Well, a half plus a half is 1, and we're still just raising x to the power of 1. That's okay. If the bases are the same when you multiply exponents, you can add the powers. So that means that adding the powers is the same as multiplying the 2 numbers with the same base. Do you see where we're going with this? A square is a number times itself. So x to the power of 1/2 times x to the power of 1/2 is the same as x to the power of 1/2 squared. So we take the square root of the x to the power of 1/2 squared. And since this is an equation, see the equal sign? Anything we do to one side, we have to do to the other side. We need to get the square root of x on the left-hand side of the equation. And there you are. The square root of a number is equal to that number raised to the power of 1/2. And turning this around, we see that a number to the power of 1/2 is the same as the square root of that number. So we've solved the mystery of at least one fractional exponent. But remember, that ghost of the index of 2, it's still there. It turns out we can generalize this. Let's turn that 2 into an n. And we can say that the nth root of a number is equal to that number raised to the power of 1 over n. Isn't that amazing? This works for any root. And this gets us several things. First, if we want to use a calculator to solve a root, let's say we need to know the 15th root of 97. Most calculators don't have a 15th root button. But using our formula, we know that the number is 97 to the power of 1/15. We can enter the base, then press the caret key to start the exponent. Then, and this is important, hit the open parentheses key. To enter the fraction, we press the 1 key, then the division key, then enter 15, then the close parentheses key, and then hit the enter key. Inside the calculator, it calculates the fraction, and then uses it to raise the base to that power, and gives us the answer. On a computer, in a spreadsheet for example, we do a similar operation. We enter the equals key to start the calculation, then enter the base, then hit the caret key, open the parentheses, type in 1 divided by 15 and close the parentheses. Hit the Enter key, and the spreadsheet calculates the answer. We can also understand how to deal with general fractional exponents, like 2 to the power of 3/4. We can use the same trick. Enter the base number, then hit the caret key. Open the parentheses, enter in 3 divided by 4, then close the parentheses, then hit the Enter button. To understand a bit about what's going on under the hood of this calculation, we can say 2 to the power of 3/4 is the same as 2 to the power of 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4. To multiply two numbers with the same base, we add the exponents. So we can say that 2 to the power of 3/4 is the same as 2 to the power of 1/4 raised to the power of 3. And we know that 2 to the power of 1/4 is the same as the fourth root of 2. So 2 to the power of 3/4 is the same as the fourth root of 2 raised to the power of 3. We could also evaluate this expression in the calculator. Finally, being able to convert radical expressions to exponential form can also help us to multiply radical expressions, such as the square root of a times the fourth root of a. We can convert these to exponential form, a to the power of 1/2 times a to the power of 1/4. We can add the exponents to get a to the power of 3/4. So, this simple equation is a very useful tool and very much worth knowing.